Chapter 1451. Collapse of Faith. Zhang Yi used the shortest time to explain to Zhu Zheng what he had encountered. We encountered an ancient civilization 30,000 meters underground on the snowy plateau. Once they are born, they will pose a huge threat to the entire human civilization, especially the Huashu kingdom. The individual qualities of this ethnic group are extremely terrifying. It can be understood that there are one alien per capita, and even a large number of high-level aliens have been born among them. We must destroy them. Otherwise, the consequences will be disastrous. Zhu Zheng's brain received this information, and he quickly realized that Zhang Yi had secretly run to the southwest region and did something behind his back. However, hearing Zhang Yi's serious tone at this time, Zhu Zheng also knew that there was no way to delay things. After thinking for a few seconds, he nodded. Okay, I agree to launch the god of death of love. Zhu Zheng would doubt other people, but he would not doubt what Zhang Yi said. Because if Zhang Yi is willing, no one can stop him from launching the god of death of love. There are many forces in the Jiangnan region who want to cooperate with Zhang Yi and replace him easily. In a sense, Zhang Yi is the real supreme commander of the Jiangnan region. He said hello to Zhu Zheng to give Zhu Zheng face, so Zhu Zheng would not be stupid enough to go against his wishes. It's just that the depth of 30,000 meters underground is beyond the reach of even the most advanced earth-penetrating bombs currently used by humans. Zhu Zheng asked a question. Zhang Yi raised his head and glanced at the sky. Then he said calmly, "Don't worry, just launch it according to the coordinates I specified. I will open a path for it. Well, when do you need to launch it? Give me a signal." Okay. After Zhang Yi finished speaking, he did not rush Zhu Zheng to launch the death of love. That kind of thing is a backup. It will only be used after it is confirmed that Prince Anlet is completely unable to be solved. Otherwise, Zhang Yi does not want to completely wipe out the Nash kingdom from the underground. After all, he wants to learn some information about ancient civilizations by observing the Nash kingdom. Just when Zhang Yi was about to leave, he accidentally saw a light spot in the distance. He looked closely and found that the light came from Songjia Temple. The powerful wish power poured into the great snow mountain in a posture that only aliens could see. But slowly, that powerful force was slowly dissipating. It was fire. The light Zhang Yi saw was fiery and majestic. The Songjia Temple, which had stood for thousands of years, was burned down by the tantric followers who had been holding grudges for a long time. How firm the faith was in the past, how terrible the anger is now. The movement launched by the rebels has been in full swing throughout the snowy plateau. In order to completely cleanse the feudal forces that have poisoned the snowy plateau, they must destroy everything that symbolizes the power of the nobility and the power of the monks. And the Songjia Temple is the most important holy place of Tantric Buddhism. Only by destroying it will people's obsession with the Tantric sect disappear completely. This time, I'm afraid it's going to be bad. Zhang Yi muttered, and then reactivated the space shuttle to enter the underground. After a while, he came to the battlefield between the funeral master and Prince Anlet. Prince Anlet, who fought in the form of Nastada's incarnation, looked like a huge beast. Even its slender and strong posture, dark green color, and long tail reminded Zhang Yi of a creature from ancient times, dinosaurs. The burial master, who was covered with golden wish power, confronted the huge Prince Anlet with his human body. His indestructible golden body made him as powerful as a god. But suddenly, the wish power that kept pouring in began to weaken, which made the burial master at a disadvantage for the first time in the duel between the two. Prince Anlet pointed his right index finger at him with a ferocious posture. An invisible energy gushed out from the slender green fingertips, and the next moment it shot towards the burial master, exploding in the area thousands of meters around him. The blazing golden light around the burial master slowly dissipated, and Zhang Yi saw the confusion in his eyes, as if he was puzzled as to why the wish power on his body dissipated. The only good news was that after a long and desperate fight between the two, Prince Anlet was also seriously injured, and his fighting power was greatly reduced. Zhang Yi frowned when he saw this, and when Prince Anlet was about to attack, he stretched out 2 fingers of his right hand towards him. God's domain purification. Prince Anlet had already sensed Zhang Yi's appearance, but he didn't see Zhang Yi at all. In his opinion, a guy of Zhang Yi's strength was just a bug. But he didn't expect that this move would make his body stiffen in place, and he was squeezed hard in the middle by the huge force. There was a moment when his muscles and bones were slightly uncomfortable.
Boom.
Prince Anlet suddenly burst out with strength and directly broke free from the restraints of the divine realm pure tribulation on his body. He stared at Zhang Yi coldly, but before he could make a move, Zhang Yi had already dodged far away. And then came the attack of the Burial Master. Chaos, have you become stronger? Although the Burial Master was injured and blood was flowing from his mouth, he smiled and chatted with Zhang Yi. Looking at the blood at the corner of his mouth, Zhang Yi frowned. This time, the Funeral Master's wounds were not healed. As he expected, the power of faith from Songjia Temple, which had accumulated for thousands of years, was slowly dissipating. The battle between the Funeral Master and Prince Anlet was so fast that it was dazzling. Even Zhang Yi had to use the ability of tracing all things to observe the trajectory of the two people's battle. But at this time, he absolutely did not want to conflict with either of them. He could only flee. When you can't hold on any longer, tell me. I have one last trick to deal with him, Zhang Yi said to the Funeral Master. Upon hearing this, the Funeral Master's eyes flashed with hope, but he smiled and nodded. That expression seemed to be as it should be. I knew it would be like this, chaos. No, maybe I should call you Master Padmasambhava. Zhang Yi had a black question mark on his face. Master Padmasambhava's reincarnation? He couldn't help but think of the legend of the Snowy Plateau. In the distant ancient demon kingdom period, the hero King Geezer overthrew the demon kingdom with the help of Master Padmasambhava. Even the eternal gate that separated the two worlds, and even the weapon in the hands of the Burial Master, the demon-subduing pestle, were made by that magician. Zhang Yi smiled. I am not the reincarnation of anyone. I don't believe in the teachings of your secret sections. The Burial Master did not answer, because at this time he had no time to talk to Zhang Yi. Prince Anlet's offensive was like a fierce hurricane, echoing in the sky. The pressure it brought destroyed a large area of the city. The Burial Master, whose willpower was slowly dissipating, began to fall into a disadvantage, and his injuries were increasing. However, Zhang Yi did not intend to ask for help at this time, because the death of love was the last trick he could think of. He had to wait until Prince Anlet was pushed to the limit. No, perhaps he had to force the Burial Master to use up his last bit of strength. The battle situation in the sky suddenly changed, and all the humans in Nash could feel it clearly. The golden light that was once as blazing as the Buddha was dissipating, and another terrifying force like Azura gained the upper hand. The Burial Master? Is the Burial Master going to lose? The private soldiers of the four major families trembled in their voices, unable to accept what they saw.
No.
This is absolutely impossible. The Burial Master will definitely subdue the demon and bring peace to the Tantric Buddhism. Many believers began to put their hands together and pray for the Burial Master, but this did not help much. Prince Anlet's attack was too fierce. Even Zhang Yi, who had been promoted to the Black Chariot level at this time, could only interfere with it, but could not really cause effective damage to him. He was like this, not to mention Gao Chongkong and Lancelot. The two did not have such a strong ability to save their lives like him, and they did not even dare to get close. They could only watch from a distance, waiting for an appropriate time to escape or attack Prince Anlet. Chapter 1452, The Final Means. Prince Anlet quickly gained the upper hand, and the golden light on the Master of the Funeral was shattered. Vacuum wave. Prince Anlet shot out dozens of vacuum waves in one breath. The invisible gas shot out like water drops and then quickly expanded around the Master of the Funeral, turning into a void sphere with a diameter of several thousand meters. The rapidly expanding and exploding gas will cause a huge blow to all the existences in it. The golden light on the Master of the Funeral was completely shattered, and his robes were also shattered. The whole person stood naked in the air, coughing up blood. But even in his naked posture, He still gave people a sacred feeling, and there was still a calm smile on the corner of his mouth. Zhang Yi frowned slightly. It's almost time. He flew downwards without hesitation, and immediately put the private soldiers he brought from the Pudge family into the shadow space. Master of the funeral, you hold on for a while. 1 minute. At most 1 minute. After saying this, Zhang Yi passed through the dome and went straight to the ground. Gao Changkong and Lancelot discovered Zhang Yi's abnormality. Although they didn't know what Zhang Yi was going to do, they could see the current situation clearly. They had to escape. The two of them led their men and rushed to the entrance of the demon abyss without hesitation. Although they couldn't travel through space like Zhang Yi, they could use the teleportation stone platform at the entrance of the demon abyss to leave here. Zhang Yi returned to the outside of the Great Snow Mountain and immediately said to Zhu Zheng, "Launch the Death of Love." Okay. Zhu Zheng over there had already prepared everything. As soon as Zhang Yi said a word, he immediately inserted the black key in his hand into the console, unlocked it, and pressed the button that he thought he would never press in his life. In a hidden corner of the Blizzard City, which was like a steel forest, the ground slowly cracked, revealing a huge circular passage.
Boom.
The earth trembled, and a dark and thick metal slowly rose into the air, faster and faster, and then headed straight for the southwest region. This movement was also detected by major forces around the world at the same time. However, in these turbulent years, the use of the Death of Love is no longer so rare. However, as usual, all the regions sent messages to inquire about the situation, but Zhu Zheng temporarily put it aside. On the top of the Great Snow Mountain, Zhang Yi looked at the sky and clenched his fists. Even for him, it was the first time to do such a thing, and he was very clear about his own abilities. But no one could remain absolutely calm in the face of such a thing. You have to grasp the opportunity, otherwise, your life may be in danger. Zhang Yi reminded himself cautiously. Not long after, he saw the fire with a long tail under the clouds in the sky in the distance, approaching here rapidly. Here it comes. Zhang Yi took a deep breath and then immediately opened the passage of the dimensional door. Provide an entrance for the arrival of the god of death of love. The earth-penetrating bomb will reach the designated area and then explode. Zhang Yi led the way in front, leading the huge god of death of love behind him, which contained powerful destructive power, all the way to the world under the demon abyss. At this time, the Nash kingdom had been beaten to pieces, and large areas of buildings and city walls had already been broken. The funeral master was covered in wounds and could hardly hold on any longer. Zhang Yi swooped down and shouted at him, "Luo Zhua, Zhugua, follow me." The funeral master and Prince Anlet looked up at Zhang Yi at the same time. They also saw the huge black pillar with strange shapes following behind him. "What is that?" Prince Anlet's eyes showed a puzzled look. He did not feel any terrifying pressure from that thing, but since it was a weapon brought by the other party, it must have some special features. "Is it a weapon?" he said to himself in confusion. Not only him, but the funeral master also didn't know what it was. It was just that when he saw Zhang Yi's nervous and urgent eyes, he vaguely thought of something. The funeral master showed a bloody smile at the corner of his mouth, and he rushed towards Zhang Yi with all his strength. Prince Anlet frowned, his figure flashed in the air, and he directly pulled out a sonic boom, and his huge fist blasted towards the funeral master's head. At this moment, a ghostly figure emerged from the funeral master's body. Faintly, one could see the shadow of a tall and strong man in ancient armor. He smiled at the departing funeral master, then turned around and stood in front of Prince Anlet. This legendary existence, who had been waiting for 1,000 years, finally separated from the so-called reincarnation at the last moment to meet his final mission. Prince Anlet was blocked by the shadow for a moment. And this moment was enough for Zhang Yi to grab the funeral master's arm, then quickly turn around and fly into the sky. Puff! Prince Anlet's right arm slashed through the air like a sword, directly tearing the remaining shadow into pieces. But at this moment, the huge and heavy black pillar with a blazing flame at the tail had already fallen in his direction. Is this thing their secret weapon? Prince Anlit looked at it with wide eyes, a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth. You want to use this kind of thing against me? You really underestimate me, Nash Anlit. He did not dodge, even though it would be useless even if he ran as fast as he could at this moment. But there is a saying that goes, he who is ignorant is fearless. He did not understand at all what the meaning of this weapon was to the human world. At this moment, he only felt that he was a god, an invincible existence in the world. So he clenched his fist and punched the huge black metal pillar hard. Zhang Yi, with the fruit of awakening, continued to rise, and rise at the fastest speed. Prince Anlit's fist hit the head of the black metal pillar and easily broke through it. A disdainful smile appeared on his face. But the next moment, an unimaginable, terrifying, and extremely powerful force exploded in front of his eyes. The energy exploded at a singularity, and the sky above Nash country was like 10,000 suns appearing at the same time, illuminating this world that has been dim all year round. The white light dispelled all the darkness, and even the deepest underground was illuminated. Along with this light, there was also an energy that was so powerful that it was unimaginable, and the temperature that was so hot that it could melt steel instantly swept across. Boom! The shock wave swept across, and in just a moment, the flesh and blood of Prince Anlit, who was at the center of the explosion, was completely dissolved, revealing his bones and internal organs. Just a moment later, his entire body turned into ashes. This was not the original version that landed on the island a century ago, but the latest model with a power tens of thousands of times greater. One was enough to destroy this country of hundreds of thousands of people. Chapter 1453 in the Heart. 1 minute later, tens of thousands of meters above the sky. A hole was torn in the space, and Zhang Yi led Luo Zhua and Zhuge to escape from the alien space in a somewhat embarrassed manner. They were in the rock layer of the dome, but even so, they could still feel the terrifying pressure. The explosion did not end once, but there would be multiple explosions, and the shock wave could pass through the rock layer. At the moment of the explosion, Zhang Yi took them to hide in his own alien space. 1 minute would make everyone experience the pain of months of body and mind being out of sync. But in order to save their lives, it is definitely worth it. Luo Zhua looked at Zhang Yi and said in shock, "Is this the legendary god of death of love?" Zhang Yi looked at the two brothers who had released the fusion state. Now is not the time to talk. Let's go. From today on, Nash country will no longer exist. The people of Nash country have been killed by them, and now after the explosion of the god of death of love, the city has been completely destroyed. I am afraid that if I come to look for it later, I can only see a glass city. The most regrettable thing is that Prince Anlit will be completely wiped out in the explosion. Even a bishop-level alien with an ability index of 30,000 points cannot withstand such power. His origin will dissipate because of this. Although it is a pity, at least destroying him will finally solve a potential threat to Huaxi country. Zhang Yi led everyone to shuttle upward, without stopping. The radiation level here is too high. If they are not wearing the highest level combat uniforms and Qianlong armor, even if they are not in the center of the explosion, they will suffer unimaginable trauma due to radiation. Soon after, they returned to the snow-capped mountains on the surface. Zhang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. All this finally came to an end. At this time, Luo Zhua and Zhuge were both naked. The injuries they suffered after the two merged were now on their bodies. Zhang Yi took out 2 sets of combat uniforms from the alien space and quickly put them on. Otherwise, given their current state, it is not impossible for them to be frozen to death. After Luo Zhua and Zhuge put on their clothes, they sat on the snow. They smiled at each other, then looked at the burning Songjia temple in the distance, without saying a word. Zhang Yi stretched his body, then released everyone in the shadow space, letting them relax. After everyone came out, they were all breathing heavily, their faces full of joy of surviving the disaster. Fatty Su knelt on the ground, holding the snow on the ground with both hands, cheering happily.
Woo.
Live another day. Those private soldiers who killed people like crazy also knelt on the ground, holding the snow and crying and laughing. This underground trip took about half a month. Leaving the familiar surface and going to the terrifying underground world was a huge test for their spirit. Especially when fighting with those powerful giants, seeing their own kind being eaten as snacks, they fell into despair for a time. If nothing unexpected happened, many private soldiers would have post-traumatic stress syndrome in their hearts. Zhang Yi walked to Luo Zhua and Zhugua, and his eyes fell on Zhugua. Songjia Temple has been destroyed. Did you see it? Zhuegua lowered his eyes and thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. The temple is in the world. He reached out and stroked his chest, but the Buddha is in the heart. Zhang Yi smiled and crossed his arms. You are quite open-minded. Zhuegua just said faintly, the real demon has been destroyed. From now on, the snowy plateau will no longer face its threat. Then the meaning of the existence of Songjia Temple has been realized. What does it matter whether it exists in the future? The existence of Songjia Temple is just to collect the power of faith of the tantric followers to provide power for this 1,000-year war. Zhang Yi thought about this and couldn't help but ask curiously, can I ask you a question now? Is there really reincarnation in tantric Buddhism? And what is the so-called power of faith? Luo Zhua shook his head. I don't know, but these legends have always existed. He looked at Zhuegua. Maybe he knows more after all. He has read a lot of books. Zhuegua clasped his hands together and said lightly, there has never been any reincarnation in this world, let alone any power of faith. He looked at Zhang Yi and pointed meaningfully at Zhang Yi's chest. What there is just the human heart. Zhang Yi let out a long breath. I really hate dealing with monks like you, who only know how to play dumb all day long. Zhuegua smiled and spread his hands. That's all I know. Maybe you can get the answer from somewhere else. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows and remembered the purpose of coming to the southwest region. Paji Gesang promised him that after the matter was over, he would give him the original copy of The Legend of King Geezer that their family had treasured. Zhang Yi crossed his arms and planned to find Paji Gesang. So he said goodbye to Zhuegua and Luo Zhua. We'll see each other next time if we're lucky. The snowy plateau has become a mess because of the rebel movement. He doesn't want to get involved in the mess here, so he will leave immediately after getting the original copy of The Legend of King Geezer. Donor, please wait a moment. I have an unreasonable request. Zhuegua suddenly stopped Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi turned around and looked at him. Anything else? Zhuegua stood up, put his hands together, and bowed to Zhang Yi. I hope you can let me see that girl again. The girl he was talking about could only be Lu Ruyan. Zhang Yi thought about it, then shook his head. I know you hate her for deceiving you, but sorry, she is the one I brought here. So if you have any questions, you can come to me. Don't bother her. Hearing what Zhang Yi said, Zhuegua smiled and shook his head, and said to Zhang Yi sincerely, Your Excellency misunderstood. I am not looking for revenge on her. I have something to discuss with her. Zhang Yi stared at Zhuegua for a full 5 seconds. After making sure that there was no murderous intent in this guy's eyes, he said, Okay, I can ask her opinion. He walked aside and asked Mu Yen to bring Lu Ruyan out. Then he told Lu Ruyan about Zhuegua's request. He wants to see you. Zhang Yi touched his nose. You know, he was a pure and innocent novice before. So he must have some special feelings for you in his heart. This monk is not bad, but a little stupid. He wants to talk to you. If you don't want to, you can refuse. Lu Ruyan looked at Zhang Yi with a complicated look, and then looked at Zhuegua, who was standing in the snow in the distance, silently waiting for a reply. She bit her lip, thought for a while, raised her head and looked at Zhang Yi's eyes seriously. I am willing to talk to him. Zhang Yi crossed his arms. He didn't know what kind of relationship there was between the two people. A living Buddha who broke the precepts, a woman who mixed in the world of love. It is difficult for ordinary people to see through their hearts. Zhang Yi nodded, then made way, and Lu Ruyan walked towards Zhuegua. The two of them stood in the snow and talked for a long time. Others consciously kept a certain distance, but looked at them with curious eyes. But everyone knew that Zhuegua would not hurt Lu Ruyan. Chapter 1454, Let Everything Gone with the Wind. Zhang Yi folded his arms and looked at the two people in the distance. He saw that Zhuegua had a gentle smile on his face, while Lu Ruyan was crying and laughing. After a while, Juegwa walked toward Zhang Yi, and this time he bowed deeper. Lord Hundun, may I ask you to keep Miss Liu in the snow region? Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. You want to keep her? In what capacity? Don't forget, you are the master of the Tantric Buddhism and a monk. How can a monk have a lover? Juegwa looked at Zhang Yi and smiled foolishly. The master of the funeral is dead, and the one in front of you is just the son of a shepherd. The snow region plateau is already undergoing a huge change. Songjia Temple was overthrown, and perhaps people no longer need the master of the funeral. His existence will only bring turmoil. People hope that the master of the funeral will remain in their hearts, rather than exist in the world from a high position. Zhang Yi asked, if she is willing to stay, I naturally have no objection. Lu Ruyan came over, and her eyes were moved to look at Zhang Yi. Mr. Chaos, thank you for letting me get redemption and liberation. Zhang Yi said, you chose the road yourself. I promised you that I would repay you after helping me with this. So, I agreed that you stay here. But have you really thought it through? Zhang Yi looked at Lu Ruyan with some doubts. Would this kind of woman who has been in the wind and moon field for many years really choose to stay with a person because of love? Or is it because of Juegwa's strength that makes her want to get a big tree to shelter herself? Lu Ruyan smiled. He makes me feel that my existence is valuable. Unlike all the men I have met before, only he, even if he knows my identity, can still treat me like an ordinary woman and love me. Zhang Yi touched his nose. In this case, then you stay. Lu Ruyan bowed to Zhang Yi to thank him. She smiled and said, some people get the treasure of the demon kingdom they want, and some people get a prostitute who has turned over a new leaf. Zhang Yi hugged his arms and smiled and responded, maybe for him, you are his most important treasure. He signaled the funeral master not far away. He looked over here, waiting for Lu Ruyan to go back. We all have a bright future, don't we? Lu Ruyan smiled. She said goodbye to Zhang Yi and turned to walk towards the funeral master. Not long after, the two of them left the great snow mountain hand in hand, as if no one was around. From now on, there will be no more funeral masters in this world. Only Juegwa. As for the new king of the snowy plateau, Zhang Yi looked at Luozhua. Congratulations, you got everything you wanted. But in the future, the snowy plateau will have to start from a mess, so do your best. Luozhua hurriedly said, Sir Hundun, we will still need your help later. Zhang Yi showed a meaningful smile on his face and rubbed his fingers at him. Luozhua's face was full of confusion. What are you doing? Zhang Yi said, you can ask me for help, but you have to give me benefits in exchange. Luozhua looked confused. He probably didn't know Zhang Yi's character yet. Zhang Yi laughed and took Liang Yu and others down the Great Snow Mountain. The first thing Zhang Yi did after going down the mountain was to go to Paji's house to find Paji Gesang to ask for the original copy of The Legend of King Geezer. But when he arrived at Paji's house, everything he saw made his head hurt. Paji's house no longer existed. There were rebels and serfs everywhere. They occupied Paji's territory and excitedly looted all the supplies here. The originally magnificent huge courtyard was divided up. People happily moved into the house of the former master. The food was looted, and the beef and mutton in the freezer had long been dragged out by them and barbecued in the open air. They had not eaten a proper full meal for too long. Now they can finally get back everything they deserve. How can they not be excited? It's just that if this chaotic scene continues for a while, I'm afraid that a large number of people will die. But these are left to the locals to manage, and Zhang Yi doesn't care. What he cares about is, where is Paji Gesang? Zhang Yi looked around and grabbed a rebel and asked, where is Paji Gesang? Is he dead? The rebel had seen Zhang Yi at the base before, and when he saw it was him, he immediately stood in awe. It's you, sir. Are you looking for Paji Gesang? He's there. The rebel pointed to the sky in the distance. Zhang Yi turned his head and saw a huge flagpole hundreds of meters high. On the top of the flagpole, there was a large piece of bloody rotten meat. Blood was flowing down the rotten meat, and the upper half of the flagpole was dyed red. That's Paji Gesang. The rebel showed his white teeth, his eyes full of the pleasure of revenge. We killed him. But it's too easy for him to die like this, so we took off his skull and made a urinal and peeled off his skin to make a drum. Then we hung him up so that everyone can see his miserable condition every day to relieve the resentment of being oppressed for many years. Zhang Yi took a closer look and nodded. It's indeed him. Although the man's face could no longer be seen clearly, it was indeed too difficult to find a person as fat as him on the snowy plateau. Zhang Yi frowned. He was not sad about Pajigsang's death, but it would take more effort to find the original copy of The Legend of King Gizer. Zhang Yi had to find Luo Zhuo again and ask him to help find the original copy of Paji's family and give it to him. Luo Zhuo readily agreed and immediately arranged a large number of soldiers to help find it. In the next few days, Zhang Yi and his team lived in Sala City, waiting for the result. However, they dug 3 feet into the ground, but they never found the hidden original copy of The Legend of King Gizer. Until one night, a man came to where Zhang Yi lived. In the deep night, a giant man like an iron tower came to Zhang Yi's door, put down a heavy box, and then floated away. Zhang Yi came to the courtyard and looked at the box. He recognized the identity of the man. It was Solong Deji, the personal guard of Paji Gesang. Zhang Yi carefully opened the box, and sure enough, there were rolls of human skin paper neatly placed inside. Zhang Yi smiled. That guy is really keeping his promise. On the border of the snow region, on a snowmobile, Paji Gesang sat in the back seat, eating a roast chicken in his hand. Solong Deji drove for him and headed towards the Shengjing region. Master, are we leaving like this? If you can get the support of Lord Chaos, maybe you can become the king of the snow region, Solong Deji said. Paji Gesang took a big bite of chicken, chewing and smiling. Forget it. That position is too hot. If you don't have the strength of a top-level warrior, you'll die sooner or later if you sit on it. He crossed his legs and leaned leisurely on the soft leather sofa. I already have many beautiful wives and concubines and countless wealth. There is no need to compete with them anymore. Let the name Paji Gesang disappear with the death of that substitute. Chapter 1455, Harvest of the Demonic Kingdom. The matter of the Southwest region has come to an end for the time being. There are still many trivial matters to be solved by Luo Zhuo and others. Zhang Yi refused their request to stay and chose to leave here with his companions. The trip to the Southwest region was very fruitful. Zhang Yi got a handy weapon, the sword in the tree, and 2 Epsilon-level origins. In addition, there are more than one source of God, which can create another potential Epsilon-level alien for him. He has a little more sense of security in his heart. However, the sense of crisis still exists, because his strength is not strong enough. At least when facing those mysterious underground civilizations, it is not enough to compete with them. Just Prince Anlet, who has just stepped into the bishop level, has made it almost impossible for him to fight back. Not to mention the more oppressive gatekeeper of the underworld, and the mysterious Bai Longzi. The car drove slowly on the way back, and Zhang Yi did not use the ability of Space Shuttle to take people back to Tianhai City directly. After a great battle, he was a little tired physically and mentally, so he wanted to relax with the scenery along the way. It's rare to come out, so let's take it as a trip, which is also a good experience. As for the girl Hua he brought back from Nash country, Zhang Yi also brought her with him. Now the entire Nash country has been destroyed, and Hua is the only survivor. Zhang Yi hopes to get information about Nash country from her. The car was given to Uncle Yu to drive, and Zhou Koda massaged his body beside him to relax his tense muscles and soothe his body and mind. However, Yang Xinxin was constantly deciphering ancient documents. The complete set of The Biography of King Gizer has tens of millions of words. After translation, it still needs to be unraveled. This epic is a eulogy of the hero King Gizer by later generations, which contains some mythological stories and the life of King Gizer. However, as a family of historians, the things recorded by the Paji family are closer to reality, and there are some unknown secrets.
What?
Zhang Yi is most interested in is the essence of reincarnation in Tantra and the source of the mysterious underground civilization. But after the trip to the demon country, he was somewhat disappointed. In fact, the so-called demon country people in the Tantric Buddhism are all humans who have accepted the power of the three-eyed tribe. Maybe even the people of the demon country have not had much contact with the three-eyed tribe. These intelligences need to be sorted and analyzed from the information obtained from the demon country. Not long after, Zhang Yi and his team returned to Tianhai City. Although they were away for only a month, Zhang Yi and his team felt that it was extremely long. It was just because what happened during this period was too complicated, even a little confusing. They returned home as soon as possible, and the frogs jumped out to greet them excitedly.
Quack.
Wow, my good friends, you are finally back. During the time you were away, I was so bored that I almost hibernated. The frog jumped over and gave Zhang Yi a bear hug. Zhang Yi patted its back and asked with a smile, "How are your centipedes?" The frog patted his chest proudly. "Don't worry. I am an expert in raising insects. Now they are all fat and white. If there are any disobedient ones, I will stuff them into my mouth and eat them. I guarantee that the ones left are all docile and excellent varieties." Later, Zhang Yi really went to take a look at the centipedes, and he almost didn't recognize them. The centipedes, which were originally slender like bamboo joints, were almost raised by the frogs into silkworms. They were so fat that they could only pupate in the farm. Good guy, they all became cricket pupae. Zhang Yi rubbed his forehead. That's good. We just need them to provide the source material, and they don't need to be really good at fighting. After everyone came back, Zhou Haimei and Yang Xia immediately prepared a sumptuous meal, and everyone celebrated. And Fatty Su also took out the notebook that the three-eyed tribe's master gave him before he died, as if he was offering a treasure. It's called a notebook, but it's taller than Fatty Su. Boss, this is something given to me by a knowledgeable old senior of the three-eyed tribe. I think there may be important documents about the three-eyed tribe in it. You can take it and study it carefully. Zhang Yi took a look and said, "Let me take a good look." He laid the heavy book flat on the ground and felt that it weighed at least several hundred pounds. If it weren't for daily exercise, it really couldn't be moved. Zhang Yi was curious and didn't know what material it was made of. As a result, he opened it and saw that it was full of words that he couldn't understand at all. There's no way. I'd better keep this thing and slowly decipher it. Zhang Yi shook his head. He looked at the somewhat timid Hua who was standing aside. Hua blinked and looked at it twice, muttering, "It seems I can understand some of it, but I don't quite understand some of it." As a human being in Nash country, that is, a pet or food, the ability to recognize words is extremely lacking. However, Lu Kuoran came over, carefully checked the material of the stone slab, and then said to Zhang Yi very seriously, "Brother Zhang Yi, the material of this stone slab is very old. It must have a very long history." Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows with some curiosity. "Oh, really?" Fatty Su couldn't help but say, "Of course the history of stone is long. Isn't it billions of years?" Lu Kuoran was shocked by Fatty Su's words, was amused. "That's not the case." She explained to everyone, even stones can be divided into new and old. Impurities that have been deposited underground for a long enough time will also form new stones. She pointed to the mysterious slate, and this slate, I can see at a glance that it has been through at least millions of years. After all, she's a top person in the field of research materials, and her words cannot be wrong. Zhang Yi touched his chin and said to Yang Xinxin, "Xinxin, you'll be busy for a while. You have to decipher all the information we brought back from the southwest region. There are 3 main research materials. First, the original version of The Legend of King Geezer, which is the simplest because it can be translated by machine, and then it can be unraveled. Second, the historical materials of the Demon Kingdom, which is a little troublesome, but it will not waste time. After all, the Demon Kingdom is also a mutation of the people of the Snowy Plateau. Those historical materials have a history of thousands of years at most, and the text is also ancient Tantric Sanskrit. The third is a bit difficult. That is the notebook that Fatty Su got from Shuezong and the mysterious ancient slate in it." Yang Xinxin's eyes sparkled with excitement, the joy of peeking into the secrets of ancient times. "Don't worry, brother. Leave everything to me." This video ends here. Please like and comment. Do subscribe for more videos, thanks.